Welcome, everybody, to KÖN Talks podcast. I'm so thrilled to have a guest today, Sarah Watt, who is a facilitator that knows no limits when it comes to challenging oneself to just go beyond what is comfortable and what is just different, and really inviting to this leadership of like being you with leadership. So I'm very grateful that you're here. And she's also based in Australia, and specifically recently in Tasmania, which is very exciting. And I'd love to hear more about that, and just kind of give us a energetic tour of this choice in Tasmania. That's really what I'm looking for as a start.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you for a beautiful introduction. I know we spoke a little bit, before this podcast about how to introduce me because you've caught me in a very big transitional stage of my life right now. A lot of things changing in my world, which we can definitely talk about. But, one of those big changes that you mentioned was my move to Tasmania. So just to sort of, because, a lot of people, even in Australia, I mean, probably more Australian people are like, why Tasmania? Like, it has a reputation for being so beautiful and there's so much nature here and so much space. I mean, if you want to Google the state, it's tiny. It's a tiny, tiny state. You can drive. It's an island state as well. It sits kind of off the mainland of Australia. And you can drive from the top to the bottom in like 3 hours. It's very small. And the whole population here is probably about 500,000 people. So it's not very many. It's tiny. But talk about a place where it feels like they took something so much bigger, like a land mass, and kind of folded it and kind of jammed it into this small space because I mean, I've lived here not for that long, but we also traveled here before we moved here. And I feel like I've seen maybe like 2% of the state. It's literally filled with just different types of nature. Like we have mountains, we have snow, we have beaches, um, rainforests and waterfalls and a lot of farming and stuff like that. So it's just this hugely diverse place, and it has a lot of history as well. It was kind of a big part in the formation of Australia as a country. So yeah, like a lot of people in Australia are like, why Tasmania? And my partner and I, we moved here together, and we're kind of like, we don't really know. And that was like our answer to begin with, was like, I don't really have an answer for that. Like, it wasn't this cognitive thing that we were like, we're going to move to Tasmania, right? We just knew that we wanted to buy land. We wanted to have a lot more space. And where we were living, we were kind of done living there for various reasons. It was getting very populated and it's very hot up there in Queensland. You don't really have seasons. It's hot and it rains. I mean, I'm sure you sort of know something a little bit about that, where things don't change a lot seasonally. But it was never the idea to come to the very bottom of Australia either. So when I look back and I reflect on it throughout, honestly, I feel like it was the universe's plan for me, for us, obviously. I have a partner who's involved in this. I also have my dogs and my horses that came down with us. But I honestly feel like this was where the universe put me in order to, I don't know, like start this next chapter of my life that I've really embarked on since living here. And it was so funny when I moved here because can you hear my dog barking in the background? He's being very loud. No, okay,
No,
good.
but hi,
Zoom's good.
he's talking.
Yeah, they always do this. As soon as I'm on a podcast, they're like, we need to be a part of this.
Oh,
Um,
but yeah, I can't hear him at all. Yeah.
okay, good. I don't know what he's seeing, but he's got a very loud bark. So yes, and even when the choice was made to come down here, I think I was a little bit naive as well. I was like, we're just moving interstate. Like, it was a big move. It was quite far, but it was easy. Everything just fell into place and we moved here. And I know I'm spending a lot of time on this particular part of my recent history, but I guess I'm really just now realizing how much this move was the catalyst and like this big tipping point in my life. And I mean, at the time, even when I got here, I was sort of like, yeah, I live in Tasmania now and it's wonderful. And but within a few months, I was like, oh my God, I'm ready to change absolutely everything in my life. I'm like, yeah, everything just started to like do this huge shift that I've never perceived in my life before. Like I've never really I've changed a lot. Sometimes I feel like I've had like, 10 lifetimes in this lifetime. I think I'm 44 now, and sometimes I feel like I've lived like 3 or 4 or 5 lifetimes already. But I don't think I've ever had like as big a change as this with quite the level of just ease and smoothness and total support of everyone around me. Even people that aren't really directly involved in my choices have been so supportive of them. But overall and mostly, it's just this feeling from the universe. And I know that sounds a little, I don't know, vague or something like that. But sometimes like it just feels like everything is supporting you. It's almost like I'm just kind of floating along. And not to say there's definitely challenges because as people, right, we have these brains that tend to want to take over and start like, telling us all the things like that could possibly go wrong and we should be like more careful and what are you going to do if this happens? And so I'm not saying I don't have those moments because I definitely do. Um, but yeah, there's definitely a level of um, support, I want to say, is probably the best way to describe it. Support from the people around me, from the creatures around me, and from the universe and the planet. So, yeah.
Wow. Oh my gosh. I'm just loving the download you just shared. And I'm also getting the sense of like mountains and a valley for some reason. Is that where you're living?
No, well, the land that we're on is quite flat, but we're surrounded, like, I mean, looking out my window now, I sort of oversee my property, and we are actually, well, actually, you're quite correct. I mean, I wouldn't call them quite mountains that are around us, but we are definitely in a valley. You to get to our property, it's not like you don't imagine like the Swiss mountains or something like that. I mean, Australia does mountains pretty tamely. We don't do huge mountains. But yeah, actually, you're correct. I do live in a valley. It's just that the mountains around it are probably a little bit more like hills. But yes, and we actually, because of that, we have quite a good supply of water where I am. We get quite good rainfall because of like how the topography of the land is around us. But yeah, you're actually correct. Technically, you're very correct. We are in a valley and we're surrounded by very small mountains.
Thank you for confirming. There's just a
Yeah.
sense of a very nurturing energy and just having the back of everyone that's there.
Yeah, yeah. And like I've never owned a property before. My whole life I've rented the places that I live, and sometimes they've been in cities. I mean, I've lived in a lot of different parts of Australia, but I've never owned something, and not that you really own it, you're more the steward of that place, right? Whether you rent it or whether you own it. But there's definitely a different energy when you purchase, you put the money on the table and that property and the house and the land becomes yours to the degree that anything can really be yours in this world. And it's really been like a whole new learning curve for me because um, I guess I've known for a long time the impact and the influence we have on the land around us and the built like the house we live in, our land, whether it's a big bit of land or a small bit of land. But that's been another big kind of like multi-dimensional learning curve for me being here because it's a lot of land. It's 100 acres. which is quite a chunk of land. I mean, it sounds like a lot, but once you live on 100 acres, you're kind of like, it's not that big, but it is. It's pretty big. And we have a lot of trees and we have a lot of paddocks and a lot of space. And you really start to realize how big a role you play in all of the energies around you with that. And you also realize the people that have owned it and had it before you, obviously the way they've been with the land and the house energetically, but also physically, it's still there, right? Like you kind of take over this thing that has been, I mean, this house that we're in was built in 1989, so it's, 37 years old or something like that. It's got a big history as well. And you kind of like show up and you're like, hi. And all of a sudden you're kind of in this relationship energy with this land and this home and all of the things that have come along with it. And that's where you also start to learn about how much you can change and impact and influence things, and also how aware you are of things too. Like you start to become aware of like, oh, so certain parts here weren't really taken care of very well, and maybe some of it hasn't been shown a lot of love and a lot of gratitude and a lot of appreciation in a while. So yeah, another huge part of and we can go into a little bit about this other transition in my life, but what I've realized is this property and this land require a lot from me right now. Like it's sort of like, it requires my attention and my energy. And I think in a lot of ways, rewinding back to when we were talking about my move down here, I think the land and the property brought us here as well, because I would like to think of myself as someone that's pretty aware of the things going on around me and also very willing to contribute to the things around me. And I honestly think, you know, this place wanted us as much, if not even more than we wanted it, quote unquote, when we were looking at properties. It was sort of a very interesting decision when we decided to choose this place. It was sort of like, yeah, and then everything just boom, 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 and then all of a sudden we were here. So yeah, it's also interesting acknowledging you don't have a lot of control over the things you think you have control over. A lot of the time there's things that play around you that are aware of you as a being and your energy, and actually are very willing to orchestrate different things in order to have you and your energy contribute to them and in their world as well. So yeah.
Oh my gosh. Oh, the, what you're saying is just melting so much in my world, because it's also an acknowledgement of what we know about
Hmm.
lands and the consciousness of lands and the
Yep.
beings there. And I really have to acknowledge too the gifting and receiving that's occurring, and the generosity of spirit that you be, that that practically like teleported you to where you are right now. It's like the land is like her.
Yeah. But also what I'd love is for everyone to acknowledge that about themselves
Yeah.
as well. Like really, if you're listening to this podcast and or whatever, and you hear this, like acknowledge
Wow.
that's in all of us. Like that's really the gift of us being on this planet, and this planet being with us. Like, there is this relationship that we share this with this planet that is so different to everything else, because we're kind of the ones that can either cause the most destruction in a lot of ways, or the most, regeneration and health and all of that sort of stuff. So the other big thing about that I've noticed about this move to Tasmania, as well as my other big transition, which just happened in the last few days or week or so, was leaving my job, finishing up my job with Access Consciousness, which, I've worked with that company for 10 years, and I still am a facilitator of Access Consciousness, but I just chose to end my roles with Access, to also acknowledge when you make choices and you acknowledge the choices you've made in whatever way it is, how much that contributes to other people. Like, it's the other thing that's really blown me away is how many people are like, how many people talk about Tasmania now? It's like,
Mm.
I think there's a term for it, like a scientific term, when all of a sudden the thing that you think about or the thing that you're aware of starts showing up everywhere. Like, it's almost like the quantum entanglements of the universe is like, okay, Sarah's in Tasmania now, and I have this energetic reach. I know a lot of people around the world. And now all of a sudden, it's almost like I'm like this tapping point, like where people can tap into Tasmania now. And it's so interesting to see how the choices we make also contribute to not only like the immediate surrounding of ourselves, but also everyone else and everything else that we're in connection with. And then the same with me finishing up my job, because that was also wasn't like a cognitive thing where I was like, I don't have a job right now. I'm technically unemployed, which is like not, I mean, for me, I lied when I was like 13. I lied about my age so I could start working because I thought in this world to mean something, to have money, to be whatever, you have to work. You've got to have a job, at least one job. Hey, one's kind of like a luxury. You should probably have a few jobs and you should wake up every day and contribute all of your energy to your job. Like, that's who I've been my whole life. And now all of a sudden I wake up in the morning and I'm like, I don't have a job anymore. And it's a very interesting space to be in. It's a big learning curve for me. But the point I'm trying to make is me leaving my job with Access, and you never leave Access, you never leave anything truly. Like, anything you've ever been connected to, you remain connected to forever. But just saying leaving my job just kind of gives people the context. But when I made that choice, it's so interesting the amount of people that then reach out to me and talk to me about like the impact I've had on them and the things I contributed to them, and also the contribution of that choice that I made. That people are like, because I wasn't just any Joe Smo in Access. I was one of the worldwide coordinators. I headed up the worldwide translation of Access for 5 years or something like that, and I worked very, very heavily with a lot of parts of the company. And I think the other cool thing was to acknowledge when you make a choice and you're willing to make a choice and be brave with that choice, that's a contribution to everyone and everything. And it's not even in a cognitive sense of anything. It's just where people kind of like there's this shift energetically in the world. And I guess the point I'm trying to make here is really the move to Tasmania, and the choice to finish up my roles with Access have been two very big choices in my life in like the last 8 or 9 months, that have been a tipping point for me, but also to acknowledge everything that it's contributed to around me as well. And it's just been such a beautiful gift to be able to see Access talks about choice. Like, it's really one of the fundamental principles, the lessons, the things we learn about in Access is that choice creates everything. Choice creates awareness, choice creates possibilities, choice creates. So, and then having these two big choices in my life and seeing what that's created in so many ways, it's really, cemented so many things that I chose to get me here. Because that's the other thing is you are where you are in life right now because of all of the choices you've made. Every single choice has gotten you to where you are, which is such a freeing concept, because then you get to go, okay, do I love where I am right now? Are there parts of it that I love and parts of it that I wish were a little bit different? Then you can kind of break things down and have a look at them and start to choose the things that you would like to have, and to choose to change the parts of your life and where you are right now that may not be, exactly perfect for you or whatever. So.
Right. And it doesn't have to look like anything that exists right now.
Totally. And that's the cool thing about choice is you, whoever you are, me being Sarah, you being Thuraya, whoever you are listening to this podcast, you have choice available to you that nobody else in this world has available to them because you're you and you get to choose exactly based on the entirety of your body, of your being, and of all of the choices you've made so far. So it's also very cool to look at. Yeah, that's very true because a lot of the time, outside of access or when I was a small child, you're taught to choose, right? Like that's part of life. You need to make a choice. I mean, probably people refer to it more as a decision than a choice, but of that vein. But when you look at it in this reality, it's really like you can make a choice, but it needs to be within these confines. If you're talking about money or you're talking about your job or you're talking about whatever, you can make a choice. You've got choice, but your choice exists within this menu option kind of thing. And most of that is based on who our parents are, where we were born, how we were raised, what we were taught about those things growing up. And one of the bazillion things I love about access consciousness is it starts to teach you that actually that's not correct. And one of the cool phrases in access is, what if you discovered that everything you thought was true in this world you found out was a lie? And that is actually a big one that I learned and am still learning, that actually you have infinite choice. And through your choices, you have infinite possibilities. And for a lot of people, that's very hard to swallow because we don't want that level of freedom. We don't want that level of chaos and being out of control. Um, but if you're willing to like be brave and just even start looking at that as a concept, it's actually like the ultimate freedom in this world to know that you actually are the one that gets to choose whatever the hell you want in this world.
I guess you're talking about living life as an adventure.
Yes. Yeah. And that's something I'm still discovering through Raya. And I'm sure a lot of people look at my life and I look at my life like, whoa, as a kid, never would have dreamt this could be my life. Never, 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 never. We grew up poor. There was a lot of abuse in my family. Like, I could have chosen to go down. I mean, I never would have. Like, even as a child, I was like, always off, playing in the dirt with the animals and whatever. But, when you look at it from that place, it's like I could have chosen some very different paths. But yeah, you start to explore this place and these possibilities, and you learn and you teach yourself that actually life is an adventure. And what are the key parts of the adventure that are important to you? And then you start adding those things. And yeah, so I mean, I look at my life now, it's an adventure. And you know what? I feel like it's the tip of the iceberg. I'm still like, this is amazing. I mean, I have my farm, I'm surrounded by animals. Like I said, as a kid, never would have dreamt it. I have 4 horses here that live with me. I've got my cows, my dogs, and this is just the beginning. I'm going to have more animals. But I'm still like, it doesn't mean I'm like, get out the rocking chair, it's time to, Sarah's life is done. No effing way. I'm like, this is the beginning of my adventure. Every day, I'm like, if this was the beginning of my adventure, this was just the first page in a like multi-book series. Like, what do I want to choose next? What do I want to add to my life next? And yeah, I love that. Your life is your adventure. You just have to choose it. You have to be the one that makes those choices and navigates it. So, yeah, which is both very freeing and very inviting. And it's also a little bit scary as well. It's been scary for me. It's scary for a lot of people to know that you actually have that amount of freedom. But if you can embrace it, it's very cool.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Thank you for that bit. it's like this, both the excitement and being also terrified. Like, how can I have so much freedom of like just choosing whatever I want to choose, not having to look at it as either a right choice or a wrong choice, which is what we like, at least, speaking for myself, I spent a big chunk of my life and still do sometimes, a lot of the time. In case Gary listens to this and calls me out by some chance, a lot of the time, considering whether this is going to be the right choice or the wrong choice. But lately, it's been more of a, okay, what's actually fun and what's actually matching the future that I'd like to create, and just
Yep.
looking at it energetically. 'Cause it seems like me trying to cognitively kind of like figure out things, the more
Yep.
I put myself in a box. And that's
Yep.
not fun.
No.
Maybe at some point it was fun and predictable, but it's kind of like not so fun right now.
I know, right? Sometimes you're like, when you start discovering this stuff and you become more aware and you start to be aware of the choices you have and what your choices create and all of that stuff. I mean, I've had moments where I'm like, can I just go back? Can I just go back to when I didn't know anything and I was just this dumb, happy person? Like you see so many people around you that just have these tiny little postage stamp lives and they like get up, they go to work, they come home, they cook dinner. On the weekends, they might, whatever, go and play golf or tennis or some other boring thing. And you're like, wow, you are so dumb and simple. And in some ways, you kind of get a little bit jealous of that because you're like, boom, all of a sudden, you possibilities everywhere and you become more aware of things. And in a lot of ways, it's tougher and trickier to navigate because you don't have like, someone telling you what to do every step of the way. Yeah, but it's what I wanted to say was if you're kind of just discovering that now, that space of possibility and choice, also realize it takes a bit of practice as well. Like don't just feel like, oh, now I have the option to be able to do this, it's going to be easy and I'm going to just be able to be this like, oh, I can choose anything and be aware of everything. No, there's times where, and a lot of times, and really every day for me is filled with being so aware of myself and my choices and what I'm choosing in every moment. Am I choosing to judge something right now? Am I choosing to choose something that creates something greater or something less for myself? It's not like this ultimate place that we got to now that gives us this, I don't know, like key to the kingdom. It's really about every day working at it and practicing it, right? Like it takes more effort to live this way than it does to just fall into the cesspool of life. So, yeah, but it's like anything, I think that if you're willing to keep going. And even when you stumble, and you might stumble for a long time, it might be a week or a month that you slip back into that whatever reality. And then you wake up again and you're like, whoa, what have I done? You choose a relationship or, whatever it is, you choose a job or something that just puts you back into that box of like smallness and unconsciousness in a way. But that's fine because ultimately, the moment you're ready to choose something different again, you have that option available. But I also just wanted to highlight at times, and I'm sure you know about this as well. It can be tough, and you've got to work at it as well, and you've got to be willing to be your own critic and know and pull yourself up and be like, Sarah, you're doing it again. You need to look at this and choose something different, or you're going to end up you know, choosing something that potentially could just create not fun things, basically.
Yeah. And then you just get back on the horse.
Exactly. And try it again.
I love it. I do
I love
have,
horse analogies.
yes, I love horse analogies too. Spot on. I do want to like, while I have you, I would love to just explore a bit, um, or expand more on this energy of seasons, let's call it, because I did see you did post about it also recently on your socials, and that's what
Yeah.
put this ping in my world. I'm like, oh, I'm going through a season. This isn't forever. I've been making it so significant and so like unchangeable, but it's just a season. So I'd love to sort of, yeah, could you kind of share what your awareness about seasons and the seasons that you have been through lately?
Totally, yeah. And I mean, really, it's like everything I've spoken about in recent times. So I would say when I moved to Tassie, it became, I mean, if you were going to reference it to a season as in summer, autumn, winter, and spring, because you look at those seasons, and no matter where you are in the world, there's a shift every time those seasons change. And, it's based around the sun and the moon. It's not necessarily the calendar, it's not necessarily these calendar months. I mean, they give us a rough idea, but it's really the planet. It's really what the planet goes through year in, year out. And, in some parts of the world, it's more extreme and you really get clarity between the seasons. And in some parts of the world, it's not so obvious. But whether it's obvious or not, it's still there, right? You can still very much perceive the shifting of the planet and how the animals, the trees, the nature, and everything respond to the seasons. So, I mean, that really kind of just gives you an easy and good guideline to follow, because if you look at each of those seasons, they each kind of represent something very different to the others. Like you look at winter, and winter is the time of hibernation, of rest, to a time to slow down and regenerate yourself and the planet and the animals and everything. It's their time to go, "Ah, okay, it's darker, it's colder, the days are shorter. It's time to rest, and the pace really changes. And then, spring comes next. And from spring, we have the season of rebirth and regeneration, and where all the flowers start to come out and the grass starts to grow and the days start to get longer. And then, summer. And I love living in Tasmania because here we get real seasons. And I've actually have lived somewhere once before where you got clear seasons, not for very long, but here in Tassie, right now we're in autumn, and it's literally like the trees start to change color, the days are getting shorter, it's colder, right? Like it's this really clear changing of the seasons. And here in summer, the days, you have 15 hours of sunlight. The sun is up at 6 a.m. and it sets at like 9 p.m. at night or something like that. So the days are long. You're packing in, you've got time to be out and doing things. You're on the go, your body's moving. Your body clock changes. You start to be awake for longer, you probably sleep a little bit less, and when you are awake, there's a lot of sunlight, you're outdoors, you're doing things. And then autumn, you feel that shift again. So when you look at your life, it's like, look at your life right now and kind of be like, what season am I in? Or what season have I been in? Maybe is even a better way. Because, when I look at myself, I would say when I moved to Tassie, I really moved into this winter. And it's funny because we moved here in the middle of winter. So it was freezing for a girl coming from Queensland, where the coldest it ever gets there. I mean, sometimes you'd have a nighttime of like 8 degrees Celsius or 9 degrees Celsius, but even the winter days, you're talking 20, 22, 25 degrees Celsius, whereas you come to Tasmania and, it's zero, it's every night. And then during the day, it's like 12, 13 degrees. So our daytimes down here were like the coldest night times where I'd lived. So, my body was like, whoa, but it was interesting to perceive how I kind of knew, like it was like my body and my being knew how to slow down, which is something like I was saying before, I've never really done that in my life. I've never stopped since I was very young. I've always been in a constant state of forward motion. I mean, even when I lived, I've got my dog, one of my dogs here sitting by my side. She turns 6 in July. And, I was thinking about it. I got her, she's a COVID baby, I laugh about, because, I got her when we were stuck, when all of a sudden the world stopped. And I was like, oh, I'm not going to be traveling for a while. I'm going to get myself a dog. And, I think the first 4 years of her life, we lived in 5 different homes. They were all on the Sunshine Coast, but I've moved a lot. I've just constantly been in this state not maybe you could describe it as unrest. I always found pockets to rest because I value rest very highly, but when I got to Tassie, I really perceived my whole body and being moving into this state of hibernation and of rest. And yeah, I started sleeping like more than I've ever slept before. I used to be a terrible sleeper. Like I would struggle to sleep, 6 hours a night or something like that. And then all of a sudden I found myself being able to rest a lot more. And when I look at the move down here and that move into what I would say was like the season of winter for myself, I was like, wow, this is kind of cool. Like this is kind of like a shock that it's possible to be able to just stop and rest for a little while. Um, but man, I adapted to it really quickly and I actually really enjoyed it. And I really gave myself the space to enjoy it and to slow down for a few months. And I guess that sort of also was part of the beginnings of me realizing, although it wasn't super cognitive straight away, but when you work with the company like Access in the roles that I was in, I mean, there's a lot of people that work for Access that have different roles, but the role I was in, I would wake up every morning to a minimum of 150 messages on my phone from around the world because, while I was sleeping, Europe was awake, America, they were both in their like prime time of the day. So, my mornings for many years became about my job and responding to the things that people had going on in the nighttime while I was sleeping. And so anyway, without going too deeply into that, because that's like a whole nother conversation of what that is like energetically, I just started realizing like this, I was moving into a different season of my life and I freaking enjoyed it. I really liked it. And I guess I've been in that winter state now probably for like 6 months, I would say. And now I feel like I'm transitioning out of that. And even though it's autumn here and we're moving into winter again, like there's definitely a slowing of the pace a little bit here. Like we've probably still got another month or so of the longish days and there's a lot going on on people's farms and there's another harvest to happen in Tasmania, there's another harvest of all the hay to happen and all that sort of stuff, but it's definitely starting to feel like this slower pace. But for me, I actually feel like a little bit different to that. And for me, it's almost like a bit more of a spring energy where there's some different energy starting to pop up and blossom in my world. And I'm starting to perceive things in the not too distant future that potentially, yeah, are growing right now and will be ready to, present themselves to the world then. So, I mean, as an invitation for you and for your listeners to look at that, like what season have I been in? What season of my life? And if I wanted to change that energy a little bit, what would it feel like to be in another season? And kind of look at your past a little bit too. Like I think also as we get older, like age definitely has a part to play in this. And it's not about making age significant, but it's definitely about acknowledging I'm a 44-year-old and what is important to me now, or what was important to me as a 30-year-old. Oh, I don't give two hoots about now. Like, I really don't care. I mean, I do care a little bit, but nowhere near like I did in my 30s, what people think about me.
Mm.
Like, I see things happening where I'm like, oh, I would have had such a different reaction to that 10 years ago. I would have approached my days so differently. And even a year ago, I would have. So like you said at the beginning, it's this realization that nothing is forever. And really, the seasons are here to give us the opportunity to whatever, to rest, to be really busy, to grow, to like harvest, to wind down. Like you look at these things that, I mean, as people, as these bodies we exist in, we're mammals, right? And we share the mammalian makeup of our bodies with a lot of other creatures on this planet. And you start to kind of realize also, like the cells, the deep components of my body also have a reaction to the season that we're currently in and to what's going on around them. So it's also a huge invitation for you to be more connected with your body, and the earth and the animals and like all of those things around you. So it's kind of like this beautiful exploration into like what else is possible, really. Yeah.
I love that you mentioned bodies because I was about to ask you, like, was it something that your body was inviting you to lean more into, or was it that the land was inviting you, or was it both?
Yeah, and I look, Thoraya, I'm trying to get so much better at my relationship with my body because that's
Mm,
also something that I think I've been not super good at through a lot of my life is really overriding the things that my body was telling me, not even just the things it was telling me about me, but the things our bodies are so aware of. Like they are so aware of everything that's going on around them. But I think even with all of the tools of access and working so deeply in the realms of consciousness for like over 10 years now, it's still a big learning curve for me to get, I feel like sometimes it's that head on legs scenario where everything's kind of existing in your brain and in your head. And then
yeah.
you're like, well, hang on a sec. I've got like this whole sensory being, this whole sensory organism sitting below my head. But it's really only been in the last probably couple of years that I've really been on this exploration with what my body knows and my body is aware of. So I would say it was kind of both, but I think it was probably also, thank you for asking that question because it also makes me aware that it was probably actually my body that brought me to Tasmania in a lot of ways. In the beginning I spoke about the land bringing us here, but now you say that, I think my body had a huge part to play in it as well. I look back over the things I've done to this poor thing in my life, like even just like in recent times, I got very obsessed with working out. Like, I got right into CrossFit and I was at the gym, and I built this body that people were like, because I'm 6 foot tall, I'm naturally quite muscular, I have big shoulders. I walk into a room without even trying, and people notice me just because of my stature. And I created this body where, I would leave the room and people would come up to the person I was with and be like, is she like an Olympic athlete? Or like I'd be somewhere overseas and they would think I was traveling there as part of the women's rugby team or the women's volleyball team. Like, yeah. And I was like, oh, I thought that was like a good thing to be noticed by that. But all the while, my body was like, you're fucking killing me. I'm so, please stop. Can you please stop this for a little while? I just hammered myself. I was like, just so unkind to my body because somewhere I thought if people were noticing me, that it must be a good thing. And, again, because this is like another whole podcast within itself, this beautiful thing we have with us and really learning to listen to it and learning to ask it questions and learning to actually let it tell us what it knows rather than us being like, you must eat this, you must work out like this, you must look like this. And our bodies are like, dude, you have no idea. If you just shut up for 5 seconds, ask me a question, or don't even ask a question, just shut up and be aware of me and breathe into me and notice me. There's a whole lot of things I could tell you about you that you have no idea about because you've never been willing to just do those things. So yeah, thank you for that because it was my body had a huge role in that shift in our season, and the moving into rest and also the move of our physical self to this part of the world as well. So yeah.
Oh, thank you, Sarah's body.
right. I'm like, dude, I'm like,
She was aware
I
of
don't
some magic.
I don't think I've acknowledged you even like this much of how I should have for all of the things that we've changed and achieved over even just these last few months together. So yeah, how did we get so lucky to have these
I did.
beautiful, amazing bodies to play with? Yeah.
That's true. And I'm just so grateful for this exploration. And I'm so excited to see what you get up to next.
Right.
What's the next season?
Yeah.
And it's just honestly such a joy watching you and so many others like that are also choosing something that's more true for them and that's inviting them to more aliveness and more enthusiasm. And
Yeah.
I do hope that you know that I'm always here whenever you require anything
Thank you.
from Saudi Arabia, like whatever I can contribute. And I'm so
Thank you.
grateful to have you on the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you for all of your beautiful questions and the invitation and the awareness this has given me, and I just want to leave you guys with one last thought. And that is, earlier in the podcast, we talked about creating a life of adventure. And just what we were talking about then with bodies, please ask your body what it wants in its life as well. Like, for so long I've told my body about diet and exercise, and it's like, but what if your body knows where to take you? And thank you, because again, this is really leaving me with a huge like boom of awareness to walk. It's 8 a.m., 10 to 8 here in the morning in Tasmania. So I have my whole day ahead of me. And I'm so grateful because I'm going to walk into my day with this energy of that, and like asking my body about the adventure of life and what that is for my body. So thank you so much. Thank you for having me on. Thank you for listening. And right back at you. If there's ever anything I can contribute to you from Tasmania or wherever in the world, please let me know, my friend, because you are a true gift and I'm very grateful.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I look forward to visiting you in Tasmania. You're
What?
already, you've certainly put it on the map for so many of us. So you
Yeah.
might have like a herd of.
Well, I wondered why. It's my partner and myself, and you should see the size of the house we bought. It's two
Yeah.
stories. It's
Wow.
got one, two, three, four bedrooms. Like this house is massive. It's literally set up for us to have visitors. So yeah, it's very funny that we bought such a huge house. Like it's the sort of house you would raise children in, which is not what we plan to
Oh,
do. But what we do plan to do is always have it available for people that desire to come and see this part of the world. So yes, an open invitation.
oh, thank you. Okay, I consider myself invited now.
You should.
Thank you, my love. Thank you
Thank
so
you, my
much.
friend.
All right.
Thank
Thank you so much. And what else is possible, truly?
What else is possible?
Thank you. Mwah.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone.